I'm Jolene Wynn, and this is the Porn Addict's Wife podcast, episode number 217, Your Primitive Brain. If your husband is struggling with a pornography problem and you want some help with it and you are not finding the resources that you like, you are in the right place. My name is Jolene Wynn. I am a certified life coach. I am an active member of the LDS faith, and I am the wife of a former porn addict. And on this podcast, I am going to share with you the tools that you need in order to start your healing journey. This is where I'm going to show you how to dive deep into intentional living, how to rekindle connection with your spouse, how to manage all that emotional turmoil that you're feeling, how to break the addiction cycle that you have to your husband's addiction, and tell you all of the ways to do that and start healing. I am so glad that you're here, and I can't wait to get started. Let's go. Hello, my ladies. Happy Monday. I am so excited for this week as of today. Okay, so by the time this is coming out, my parents have just been here for a week. My brother and his wife were here with their 3 girls. He had a friend that also came and visited us. His friend brought his 2 girls. It has been a full house. Oh, and then my cousin's daughter. What does that make her? Is she my second cousin? My first cousin once removed? I don't know. Whoever of you guys who knows this, let me know. My cousin's daughter also came, and she's now living with my sister who lives just next door. And it has just been a blast. And now my parents are taking my kids for a couple of days. And then my husband and I are going to go meet them up at my parents' house in Delaware. And we're going to go visit them for a few days before we get back. So it has just been family and fun, and it has been a great week. Busy. I'm a little tired, I'll be honest. Normally my my energy levels for people is not very high, and I'm a little tired, but I am excited about spending this last week with family, doing another week with family, and doing all the regular things when I get back. That will be lovely. I hope you guys are having a great summer. Can you guys believe that July is almost over? This is crazy. And what I'm excited about, that today is the day that this is releasing, is July 22nd. And I am doing a free live event today that if you guys haven't signed up for, come join me. And it's how to solve your husband's pornography problem. I will put the link in the show notes if you haven't registered yet. It's coming. We are doing it live today at 1 p.m. Eastern. So if you can, please come live, because what I'm going to teach in this class, in this event, and it's not something that I've taught before, but it's something that I've been thinking a lot about, is that we try to solve our husband's pornography problem coming at it from the wrong way. We try to do it changing ourselves, changing our behavior, trying to manage our life and our circumstances. I mean, I did this for years, changed myself, my weight, my hair, my house, my kids, in order to try to reduce as many triggers as possible, trying to make it as easy as I could for him so that he didn't watch pornography. And it was exhausting, as you guys know, right? And so what I have created is kind of a strategy to how to do this in the right way, in a way that isn't about controlling him, but is actually about healing you, and how that's actually going to solve the problem that you're looking for. And so that's what I'm going to teach today on this live event. So if you can come, please join me live, sign up, and I'll send you the replay if you've missed it. And I will be doing coaching on this call, and I have a special offer for everybody that comes on the call. And I am just so excited to dive into this with you to get you hopefully a little bit more of an idea of how you can start moving forward. So again, I'll put the link in the show notes. You can click on that and join me live and get access to the replay. And ladies, I want to talk to you today about your primitive brain. Oh, but before I do that, I have created a free video training that is actually for you as parents. I have so many of you guys that have reached out to me, so many of my friends that have said, I don't know how to navigate this conversation with my kids. How do I talk to my kids about pornography? And especially, how do I do it in a way that not only reflects my values as a Christian and my moral beliefs that pornography is wrong, but also doesn't shame my kids for seeing it, because ladies, chances are your kids have seen it. Whether they're searching it out on purpose or it's been something that they've come across accidentally, your kids are seeing it. So how do I navigate this conversation? How do I not make this awkward? Good news, ladies, I've created a training just for you guys. So I will put the link in the show notes to that, where you're just going to put your email in. So I will send you this free video training that I've done. Again, this is for parents. It's how to talk to your kids about pornography. So if you're struggling with how to navigate this, and this is for all ages of children. So if you're struggling with how to navigate this, sign up for that. I'll send you that video and you can grab some popcorn, grab your husband and watch it, so that you know, and so that you feel more confident navigating this conversation. Okay. All right. So today, ladies, let's talk about your primitive brain. Okay. I talk about it a lot, but I really wanted to do this own episode to give you more of a detailed idea of what goes on in your primitive brain. So I talk a lot about your higher brain, right? Your prefrontal cortex, and then your primitive brain. Okay. These are just different areas of your brain. Your prefrontal cortex, that's your frontal lobe. That's the thing that we always say that is not developed until your early 20s, which is accurate. Okay. Your prefrontal cortex is not fully developed till your early 20s, which is why children are not allowed to do certain things. They're not allowed to vote until a certain age or make certain decisions. It's because their primitive brain is developed and is running the show. Now, your primitive brain is amazing at keeping you alive. And that's your brain's goal. Your primitive brain, its entire goal is to keep you alive. So if at the end of the day you are alive, then it says, oh my gosh, job well done. Let me pat myself on the back. That's all I needed to do. And it does this in 3 main ways. That's called the motivational triad. If you've ever come to one of my calls, I will draw this up on the board and it's a triangle. So picture a triangle, okay? And the 3 points of the triangle are these 3 things. These are the 3 things that your primitive brain is motivated by. Number 1 is to decrease pain. Now again, this is a really good thing because this means that if you have jumped off the trampoline onto the ground and broken your ankle, then the next time you get on the trampoline and you think, I should jump off the trampoline onto the ground, your brain says, no. Remember, last time we did this, we broke our ankle. We should not do this again because we don't want to be in that kind of pain again. Okay, so this is a very good thing. Our brain, again, keeps us alive by decreasing the amount of pain that we are bringing ourselves to experience, that we are subjecting ourselves to. The problem with this is that your brain, your primitive brain, can't tell the difference between emotional pain and physical pain. And so what it does is it wants to avoid all negative emotion because it thinks that negative emotion is painful, which, ladies, it is. Like, let's be frank, okay? Negative emotion isn't really fun to feel. We don't love it. It's not awesome, but it is something that is necessary because when we don't, then bad things happen. And I'll go into that in a minute. But our primitive brain says, I don't want to feel this negative emotion. I have a job to decrease the amount of pain that I'm feeling. So because of this, it will say, all right, let's just shove this down and push this away and pretend it's not here or distract ourselves from this negative emotion so that we don't have to feel it. And all of those things end up creating more problems. Right? It's our avoidance, our neglect of processing our emotional pain that ends up creating emotional baggage that then gets triggered, right? It's our distraction from our negative emotion that leads us to develop unhealthy coping mechanisms that then add more problems onto what we're already dealing with, right? So rather than just feeling lonely, then we develop this distraction of eating, right? When we start to compound how much we eat, and then we gain weight, and then we feel worse about ourselves. And all of that is just an attempt to avoid feeling a negative emotion, where if we just felt it in the first place, then we wouldn't add all the problems that come from the unhealthy coping mechanism. Does that make sense? You guys with me? So even though our brain is trying to keep us safe and keep us alive, trying to decrease pain is often not the way to go, which is why it's so important to use your beautiful prefrontal cortex that is now fully developed. And you can learn how to harness that and make the decision to say, I'm going to override my primitive brain. And even though my brain says, I don't want to feel this negative emotion, I'm going to feel it anyway, because that's what I can do and also understand that this won't kill me. And that's something that your brain does not understand. Your primitive brain says, I don't want to feel negative emotion. I don't want to feel pain because I might die. Right? So it wants to avoid things that kill you, but it doesn't understand that your emotions are not going to kill you. It literally thinks that they will. And sometimes that's exactly what it feels like. Sometimes you're feeling a negative emotion and it feels so overwhelming and it feels like you're not ever going to come out of it. And so we don't want to go into it. We're afraid of feeling it because we think that feeling it means that we're just going to dive in and never come out. You guys with me? Have you guys ever experienced that? Because I know I have, right? And that is what our brain is afraid of. Our brain is afraid of if I go in this, I'm never going to come out. But this is when it's your job or your opportunity to be in charge of your primitive brain, to understand your emotions more than your primitive brain does and say, yes, this is hard to feel, but nothing bad can happen. The worst thing that can happen when I feel a negative emotion is I just feel it. I don't die. And then I move forward and it'll actually be better for me in the long run if I feel it. Okay? All right. So another point in the triangle of the motivational triad, right? This is how your brain, your primitive brain makes decisions, is that it wants to increase pleasure. Okay? So number 1 is decrease pain. Number 2 is increase pleasure. Okay. And again, this is a very good thing and keeps us alive because it says, hey, it actually feels really good to be in a herd. It feels really good to be in a group. And so let's stay in a group. Let's get married. Let's have babies. Those are wonderful things. However, this is the part that often gets hijacked by our society. This is what's going on in your husband's brain when he's watching pornography. We want to increase pleasure, things that are not hard. Okay. I don't want to go to the gym. That's really hard. I want to increase pleasure. And what's more pleasurable than going to the gym is watching Netflix, scrolling my phone, shopping online, looking at Instagram, all of those things. Okay. What is more pleasurable than putting forth any effort is actually to consume pornography. It's to consume sugar. It's to, not do the thing that I want to do because it sounds really hard and this thing is going to give more pleasure immediately. Does this make sense? Now, again, this is not all bad. Our primitive brain is designed for us to stay alive. And one of the ways that we stay alive is that we have a generation that comes after us. This is what makes us want to connect to other people because it feels really good to connect to other people. But again, it's important to be aware that this is what your primitive brain wants to do. Your primitive brain doesn't want to do the thing that is hard. It wants to do the thing that feels good. But sometimes, lady, the thing that feels good is not the thing that's best for us. Does that make sense? So for example, let's say that you and your spouse, you want to have a conversation with your spouse. You want to talk to him about something that is difficult. Well, your brain says that's not very fun. In fact, it brings up a lot of negative emotion. Do you know what's easier than that? Let's just sit next to each other in bed on our phones and I'll just watch, reels on Instagram and then we'll just go to bed. Because that's more pleasurable than bringing up something that's going to bring up negative emotion. Because again, remember the other part of the triangle, the motivational triad, is to decrease pain. So it says, I don't want to bring up something that's going to feel bad. I would rather sit and consume something that actually hits my dopamine and makes me feel a little bit better in the moment. And that's what your primitive brain is wired to do. So I just want to bring this up so you guys can be aware of where in my life am I seeking pleasure that's not actually producing what I want in the long run. Does that make sense? It's a really good question to sit with. And this is something that's come up for me. I was coaching a client on it this week. She said, she brought it to the call and I said, you really just need to process some of these emotions. She's just had a baby. There's lots of life changes, things she wants to do. And I said, we just need to process some of this emotion. And she said, okay, I'm going to start doing that. I said, you set a timer, 5 minutes at the end of the day, you process emotion, which she knows how to do because she's worked with me. And then she sent me a message, and which my clients can do, they can send me messages. And she said, why is it so hard to do the thing that I know is going to be good for me in the long term when all I want to do is just sit and scroll on Instagram? Like, why is that so much easier? I know this is not good for me. I know this isn't what's good for me in the long run. And yet in the moment, it's so hard for me to sit and process my emotions, even though that's what I know I need to do. Ladies, of course it's easier to sit and scroll on Instagram. In the same way that, of course, it's easier to eat Oreos than it is to eat vegetables. We know vegetables are better for us. We know that in the long run, we're going to be much happier and feel better if we add more fruits and vegetables into our diet. And yet it's so much easier to eat the sugar. And this is why. It's because our brain is wired for pleasure. Our brain loves pleasure. Our brain loves to have things that feel good. Okay? So just have more compassion for yourself. And this is what I told her. I said, have a lot more compassion, because this is your primitive brain saying, this is hard. I'd rather just scroll Instagram. Of course you would. No problem. But that doesn't mean you have to listen to it. But don't judge yourself if you've noticed areas in your life where you're saying, this isn't a reflection of what I actually want. I've noticed this myself. Sometimes I go through phases, maybe you guys do too, where I'm on my phone more than I want to. I'll notice it. Like I've gotten into just like kind of a habit of checking it more often or just scrolling rather than doing something else. And then I want to, my primitive brain I feel like I want to judge myself for it. Oh, I can't believe that I did this. I hate that I do this. I don't like that I'm doing this. And I want to offer that we let all the self-judgment go and just say, okay, of course I want to do this. Of course my primitive brain would rather me scroll Netflix or scroll on Instagram than actually do something productive. Of course it would rather do that. No problem. I've just been letting my primitive brain run the show a little bit too long. So now I'm going to start making an effort to change that. And it does. It takes a couple of days. It takes a little bit of time to rewire and redirect your brain intentionally, but it absolutely can be done. Okay? Now, the third part of the motivational triad, right? We had decrease pain, increase pleasure. And the third part of that, the third point in the triangle, is to decrease the amount of effort. Okay, again, I talk about this in my book. If you guys haven't read my book, you can go get it on Amazon. It's called The Not Enough Wife. And in this, one of my chapters is called Your Brain is a Lazy Teenager. And that's exactly what's going on. Your brain wants to put forth the least amount of effort possible in order to create the results that it wants. So again, this is great because this means that your brain is going to be very efficient about how to expend energy, which when you were, a million years ago in a cave, it was great because we had to stay alive. And so what's the least amount of effort I have to do in order to get the result that I need? It's wonderful. It can make us very productive and very efficient. However, what also ends up happening is it keeps us in our comfort zone. Okay. And especially in our day and age now where we're not hunting for our food and trying to just simply survive, our brain wants to decrease the amount of effort, and anything that is new and different is effort. Changing a thought, processing a feeling, making a new decision, stepping into something that is unknown and uncomfortable requires more effort on our part, on our brain's part, because then you have to start thinking about it, right? Think about when you first learned how to drive a car. Your brain was on high alert. Your brain was so focused. I remember sitting in the car, the driver's seat of the car for the very first time. My dad took me, to the middle school parking lot by our house. And I was just like, okay, the blinker is here. Which one is the brake? Which one's the gas? How do I adjust my mirror? Let me put in my seatbelt. Let me make sure my seat is moved exactly where I want it to be. Where's my rearview mirror? Let me adjust my side mirrors. Like my brain was on, okay, I need to focus on everything going around me. That was new and uncomfortable, right? Now, what our brain wants to do is our brain wants to go on autopilot. Have you guys ever driven in a car and gotten in and you're like, oh my gosh, halfway through the drive, you're like, kind of wake up and you're like, wait a minute, I have just been on autopilot. I haven't even really been thinking or paying attention to where I'm going. That's what our brain wants to do because it's easier, because it requires a lot less effort than to do something new. And something new, even if it's what's going to get us where we want to go, requires more effort, requires more intention and focus. And our brain really doesn't like to do that. So this is why it's so difficult to do the thing that you want, even though you know it's going to get you where you want to go, why it's so hard to do it, because your brain doesn't like the effort to do it. Okay? This is why it's hard to actually sign up for the class or to go back to school or to apply for the job or to sign up for the program or whatever it is, because your brain says that's hard and I don't want to do that. Does this make sense? Now, when you have all three of these parts working together, the decreased effort, decreased pain, increased pleasure, then your brain wants to stay. This is how your brain stays in your comfort zone. And I've talked about this before. I think in one of it's probably in the first 20 episodes of this podcast, I talk about comfort zones. And the problem with comfort zones is that they don't get us where we want to go. And the lie of comfort zones is that they're comfortable. In a way, they are simply because they're what our brain knows and what our brain is familiar with. But there's always a discomfort in our comfort zone. Does this make sense? Maybe in your comfort zone, you're overweight, but your brain is okay with the discomfort that comes from not being able to fit in the jeans you want, not being able to run the 5K with your kids at their school race, or feeling insecure when you go to the park with your kids. Your brain has allowed for that discomfort, but because that discomfort is what's familiar, then it thinks it's okay, and it would rather have that discomfort than the discomfort of changing your eating habits or joining a weight loss program or putting on, heaven forbid, spandex so that you can start exercising, right? So that is the lie of our brain. Our brain is trying to keep us as comfortable as possible so that we stay alive, which, ladies, as you guys know, you're already alive. And if that were the whole goal, then you would be so happy and you wouldn't be listening to this podcast. But you don't just want to be alive. You want to be better than alive. You want to actually live. You want to actually engage. You want to enjoy living. And that is only going to come when you are in charge of your primitive brain and you start making the decisions and stop letting your primitive brain run the show. Because again, your primitive brain running the show has one very simple goal. That's lovely, but that's just to keep you alive. And that's what it's been doing. So if you're not happy with the way that your primitive brain has been running the show, then it's time to take control of your brain and to start making different decisions. Because here's the other thing about your primitive brain. Not only is it only operating under the motivational triad, it also has kind of an umbrella of how it operates, which is immediate gratification. Your brain, your primitive brain, is not interested in delayed gratification. Your primitive brain is always going to say, what is going to give me what I want now, with the least amount of effort, the least amount of pain, and the most amount of pleasure. And this is why we spend hours scrolling Instagram when we know that we should do differently, or even that we want to do differently. When we know that putting down the sugar and eating something better is what's going to make us feel better in the long run, our primitive brain doesn't care about the long run. Our primitive brain says, yeah, but this is painful right here and right now. This is why we don't want to join the program or sign up for the thing, because it's painful. It costs money. It requires some time or some effort, all of which our brain does not like, our primitive brain. Even though we know that in the long run, it's going to be what we want, this is when our primitive brain is running the show. It's not going to make the decision that we want in the long run. It's going to be what is easiest right now. So I wanted to do this podcast today because I want you guys to notice and give you guys the chance to start taking a look. I want to offer that you take a look. Where am I letting my primitive brain run the show? Where am I allowing my primitive brain to make the decisions that aren't actually getting me where I want to go? And that's what I want you guys to take a look at, wherever that is in your life, and then start changing it. And here's the beautiful part, is that though you have a primitive brain that works for you a lot of the time, you also have a beautiful prefrontal cortex. And that part of you is the part that gets to make decisions. That's the part of you that says, I'm in charge. And I have let my primitive brain keep me alive, and it has done a beautiful job, and I am grateful for it. And I don't need to judge myself or my primitive brain for how it's gotten me here. But where I am now is not where I want to stay. And if that's true, ladies, then it's up to you to change it. It's up to you to start managing and controlling your primitive brain and start making decisions for your ultimate benefit, not just what feels best in the moment. Because what feels best in the moment is not what's going to keep you in a life that you love. It's just going to keep you alive. And you deserve so much more than just be alive. You deserve to love your life. And if you want help with this, I would love to help you. This is all that I do. It's my job to help you look at your brain, to see where your primitive brain is running the show, to help you learn how to manage that primitive brain so that you can actually have a life that you love. If you're ready for that, come join me. Let's keep going. In the meantime, I will see you guys next week on a brand new episode. I love you so much, ladies. Take care. All right, ladies, if you enjoyed this podcast, then I want to invite you to come join my coaching program. This is where we take everything on the podcast and we actually get to apply it in order to transform your life. And I know that that is a big promise, but it's 100% true. On the podcast, it's like learning how to ride a bike. It's like reading a book, an instruction manual via audio on how to ride a bike. And my coaching program is where you actually ride the bike. And that is what creates the transformation. This is what actually enables you to go from point A to point B, to actually create the transformation that you are seeking. If you are feeling stuck, if you are feeling like you are loving everything, but you just can't see the end from where you are now, then I want to help you. Come work with me one-on-one. I have a lifetime access program, which means it doesn't expire. You come work with me, I will help you every step of the way and work with you personally to make sure that you get where you want to go. I can't wait to see you there. Head to my website today, joleneWynn.com, and sign up.